Hello. Hello, Twitch. What's up? What's up? Do we have audio? Yes, we do. Okay. How are you how are you guys doing? All the all of you. How are you guys doing on this beautiful Thursday morning? It's an off-schedule stream, if we can talk about the schedule even in the case of this stream, which had only one, let's say, streams and episodes before. Usually we are planning on streaming on Fridays, and this will be probably a shorter one, shorter than last week. So I think we should dive right into it and see where that takes us. Okay. Let's button this up. This look more professional. Not sure actually. Yeah, let's loosen up a bit. Okay. Check. Yeah, this is better. So uh, just figuring out stuff on OBS. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome you at the second episode of the Intel Grove. Last week we've been talking about this conference, Environmental Justice for Roma Communities Conference at Cluj, Romania, which I attended as a guest, and I try to give you uh, some ideas about what went down there. Sort of a report and an analysis and of some of the things we heard at the presentations at the conference. We've been talking about the concept of environmental justice. So to give you a quick recap, according to the developers of the concept of environmental justice, the fight against racism and pollution are not enough to protect the most vulnerable communities. We have to do more because it seems that the green transition is not fair. This is the title of this stream is green transition will. Yeah, the title of the stream comes from a quote from the early introductory parts of the conference. Unfortunately, I didn't find who said this, but it's one of the key truths, maybe, uncovered at this conference. And it goes like green transition will not be fair if we don't have active policy to protect the most vulnerable. So, one of the key messages of this conference is that the ongoing setup, the institutions, and the policies in place seem to underperform when they come to the protection of the most vulnerable, the poorest, or vulnerable for other reasons, segments of our societies. The conference focused in depth on the situation of the Roma in Europe. There have been many cases in Western Europe and Eastern Europe mentioned where Roma communities are suffering, maybe in ways that are kind of unimaginable in the case of majority societies all over Europe, all over the EU, any town, any city. You don't see situations like that what you can encounter in European Union member states, countries, when it comes to certain regional, local Roma communities within their borders. Last week we analyzed some of the presentations we heard there, and we did this with the aim of, let's say, exploring ways forward, like possible solutions, roads towards possible solutions. It seemed to us, and we got to this conclusion at the end, that one certain method which could be put some more emphasis on could be a step-by-step approach, contacting the Roma communities in a respectful way, engaging in an open dialogue, because one of the major concerns is that there are mostly decisions taken without them. They are not really the people who are affected most by toxic waste, pollution, and highly segregated uh, life form, to say. So the people who are affected most are not considered as partners for dialogue. They are not involved. So we should approach these locations tactically like this. We should try to identify the key decision makers and the stakeholders within that community, because our theory is that there are clear decision makers within these communities, informal settlements, because there are informal networks, strong informal networks based on family ties within the Roma communities, slightly differently than in most of the majority societies or nationalities within the EU. And this is actually an asset. This is a strength that could be utilized and should be built upon. And once we are through this phase, once we feel that we have a clear picture about the real problems and the main key areas of what we need to develop, how should we help, what is the most needed, then we should assign resources on a tactical level and solve the harshest problems, like focus on the most hazardous situations and problems first. Drinking water, air quality that is maybe can be considered unsafe at the present moment, and the many sicknesses caused by these, like who needs immediate medical attention, what can be done to improve their conditions, and identify inappropriate shelters and try to provide short-term, when I would say medium-term situations like cheap housing or something just like in the case, just like we do with, let's say, refugee camps. I use this analogy of the asylum seeking process, that something like this is missing in the case of regular EU citizens when they encounter severe loss of their human rights, basically. When their human rights are violated for whatever reason, for example, you can, and this could maybe be a stepping stone in solving homelessness, for example, or other very tough social crises in several areas of Europe or all over the world, basically, is that there should be a process where you can ask for help, that you can state that to an institution that for whatever reason, maybe it's your fault, maybe it's to no fault of your own, but right now you are in a crisis, and thus you need immediate attention until this crisis can be solved. Okay, and in the case of, for example, homelessness or severe drug addiction or human trafficking, there are many formal and informal ways state uh, stakeholders and NGOs who are working on these. And there are better practices, better solutions, and and worse ones that are not working very effectively. But maybe we should focus more on the tactical level. So this conference was held at Cluj, and there is one clear example of environmental justice problem, situation, injustice right at Cluj. It's one of the biggest Roma informal settlements right next to the waste management facility and the landfill called Patarat. Most of the people who live there actually work in that area, in the waste management facility, but they live too close to it, and this is why they are suffering from, let's say, to give you a few examples. Oh, yes. So the residents often suffer from ear and eye and skin infections, asthma, high blood pressure, heart and stomach problems, rate of birth defects, and abnormally developing children is high. So it's terrible. And so this is one of key areas where environmental justice can be identified within the EU, and this is why the conference is focusing on Patarat as a prime example, and it tried looking for solutions that could be utilized generally. So the possible way forward, the possible roads to solutions I mentioned earlier, there should be mentioned something else. Once you see that there is a severe environmental justice problem situation going on for decades, then you can say that it's probably so every square inch or square centimeter of Europe obviously is assigned to someone or something like a settlement, a city, municipality, or maybe it's state-owned or privately owned. Now, these are usually there are municipalities involved and are responsible for what's going on their area. So if something like this can go on for decades, then you can say that the leadership of the municipality is not very active in motivated or involved in trying to solve this situation. Like, and by the situation at this point, I only mean the ongoing severe human rights abuse of the people who live there. So it's always should be looked at a case by case basis. But you can expect, I mean, this tells me that you can probably expect some sort of resistance from the local leadership, because if they really wanted the situation to change for the better, they would be actively looking for solutions, asking for help from the state, from whatever, from grant money, projects, whatever they can do, or just report about it, help the media to report about it, and not the other way, not like not answering journalists when they come to the location and they want to do interviews with local municipality personnel or someone from the leadership, and they don't even answer that. So you can expect something like this. And in the case of Patarat, we have a great. We can expect the situation is the same or even worse, because as the Deutsche Welle documentary sort of uncovered, or at least presented, which we looked at the last stream last week, it seems that the Patarat landfill received a lot of EU money to build state-of-the-art recycling processes and basically transfer an illegal garbage dump into a cutting-edge modern landfill, which actually serves as a landfill for a very small amount of the trash, the garbage that goes into it, and most of it is recycled. But what the real experience is that there is not much recycling going on, and that's probably right now how that facility, how the Pozzorat landfill and the facilities around it are operated. It's probably in some sort of violation with maybe it's probably some law breaking going on as well, and some sort of I will check this now, sorry, because words are hard for some reason today. So the contract. So there must be some sort of violation of the contract. So they received a lot of money to create a state-of-the-art, highly developed facility, and right now they almost use it like a very basic landfill without not much recycling going on. So that's one signal that maybe you can not expect much cooperation from the local leadership, because obviously if there is something fishy going on, then they are motivated in hiding it. And Patarat, of course, as many poor communities, are subject to a whole multitude of problems, human rights violations, drug abuse, human trafficking, crime. It's similar. That there are some parts, not all of the communities, but some of the communities living there are affected by these problems, and this almost always means that there is some involvement with some sort of organized crime organization, basically, and it's probably on the radar of the police, but we don't know anything about that aspect. So corruption and organized crime often go hand in hand. So it's like Paterat is it's like a hornet's nest. It's like there are many different issues with it. Of course, there is an ongoing human rights violation. The air is toxic, the land is toxic, water is toxic, and there are many hundreds of people, 1,500 people living too close to it, and they are getting sick day by day because of this. That's sad. That's the key problem. That this is why we are talking about this. But while we are taking a look at this situation, we can see that it goes deeper. There are layers of systemic problems that we can't really uncover, but at least we can see that they are there. So this is basically what we've been talking about last week, and now I would like to add some more. I would like to bring up something which I did not have the time to talk about last week, and first I would like to show you someone, like quote a presentation. The totality of the conference is available on YouTube. I will link it. Unfortunately, the conference was bilingual, and the translation has been provided on site, but of course in the video you will see that people will talk sometimes in English, sometimes in Romanian, and you don't hear the translator. So but anyway, it's nice to have it online. As you can see, it's almost 10-hour video. So this gentleman here is Andrei Ivanov, representing the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights, which I googled because I was interested. It's another agency I never heard of before. As you can see, it provides independent evidence-based advice to EU and national decision makers. Thereby helping to make debates, policies, and legislation of fundamental rights better informed and targeted. And this is actually a fully independent body. So this is a whole not new, but like a different, the independent institution within the EU system. So it's kind of interesting to see that how many institutions the European Union has. And it seems that we have an institution focusing on advising other institutions about how to handle human rights, which should be, maybe you could think that it's somehow ingrained in the structure of work, like it's a key focus. So it's just something interesting I thought I mention. So there's this institution, European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights, and let's hear what this gentleman had to say. Give me a sec. Okay, let's go.
The title of this presentation, I was for quite some time looking how to entitle it, and I decided to call it Environmental Aspects of Roma Exclusion. You may wonder why I did not use the term environmental racism. And I want to start with this, because I think that the issues which we are dealing are much more complex. They're not as black and white as the term racism would imply. And I'm afraid that if we simplify to this extreme interpretation, we may lose a lot of aspects which are necessary to address in order to make the responses sustainable and actually bring results. My second reflection before I move to the presentation is a kind of response to Mr. Berescu. I think we know for some quite years ago. Of course you are right, central policies, central planning is important. But I think, again, it's my personal view, not formal view of the agency I work for. I think the trick here is in the implementation of centrally taken decisions, standards, legal frameworks, and all the norms which are somehow stipulated in these legal frameworks at local level. And it takes place at local level, fortunately or unfortunately. And I really believe that, for example, territorial development plans have a powerful capacity to implement these noble goals, values at local level. So I would not go for this maybe artificial dichotomy central-local. I'm sure you did not mean this, but somehow I had the feeling that I need to mention.
Okay, so yeah, this is what I wanted to bring up. This has been a growing feeling inside me as well. I had attended a conference, but the day before the conference, I attended a workshop as well. So I had some time to familiarize myself with these concepts of environmental justice. And if you saw the stream or the video last week, there have been presentations which brought in the concept of environmental racism as well. And Mr. Ivanov says that, so based on what Mr. Ivanov said, maybe can we, it might be quite a provocative thing to say or even think about, but I can't shake this feeling that I just want to ask the question, what if the context of racism in the case of environmental justice is not the optimal one? Because I think I've been following these subjects. I'm a sociologist specialized in minorities, so urban and rural issues, and I'm passionate about Roma issues, obviously, for more than 20 years now. And on this channel, we are experimenting with open source intelligence analysis, but at this point it's just a colorful way of saying journalistic work, reporting. And hopefully we can go deeper into these issues, but in my daily life I'm a content specialist and a consultant, and my expertise is storytelling. And my main focus is always on the context, identifying how we can contextualize issues. And so when in 2023 we try to bring the spotlight on these issues, that there are totally unacceptable, horrific conditions within the European Union in many parts where people live in their situation is, let's say, not EU conform, to say the least. And obviously the mere existence of these locations bring up the question of the possibility of double standards, or how can we even talk about extension and getting new member states in the EU when we did not clean up the EU itself, if you know what I mean. Like, if this can go on within the EU after it has been existing for many decades, it's sad, and it has to be a priority, honestly, to eliminate these kind of problems from the Union. Okay, so do we really want to put this problem on the platform which has a racism label on it? Because the global context, there is a extremely polarized situation in the global dialogue right now. If you think about, let's say, what some people call by it's maybe a nickname at this point, or even a slur, woke, the woke side, which is the progress. Earlier, it has been called progressives. Maybe probably people who are considered woke, they consider themselves progressives, and you take a look at the alt-right, which is has been gaining some steam in the last few years, and uh, more and more people are drawn to, let's say, philosophies or policies that could be considered far right. And this is true to the EU as well. It's true to the totality of the Western world. This high polarization and growing tension which comes from this. So when you have very tactical local problems like this, practical problems like people don't have proper water coming from their taps, or they can't attend school because of the very physical segregation, like their settlements are where they are located is they can't approach schools. I talked about this last week as well. So obviously, institutional cover, nothing, no social safety nets. So will the troubled communities benefit from framing this issue as a racial problem, is the question. Is it to their best benefit to, when we take a look at this, we say that, okay, this is because mostly the Roma are living there, then it's a Roma problem. Not in the sense that the Roma are the problem, but in the sense that it's something between the relationship between the majority and the Roma, which is problematical because they suffer immensely, at least in these communities, of course. So this is not it's not like a glass ceiling. It's not like when Roma kids are separated and put into different classes. It's not like young Roma people can't get hired due to blatant racism in the majority societies, because these issues are soft. These are social issues. They are mostly due to how we think and how we speak about this. But this problem here in Patarat and in many other parts of Europe, this is a palpable. It's very real. It's very physical. You can go there. You can smell it. You can experience it, and you could technically solve this with physical measures. If you just spend a lot of resources and money, the situation of those people can be changed instantly. But of course, it's not happening. So it is a location-based problem, and the relevant context here would be municipal. It's about the towns, the cities, and the villages, and very practical and technical. So isn't that a risk that if we frame this as a racism problem, then it will be just identified as a racism problem and a racial problem, and it will just land on the desks of the people who are working for the institutions to fight racism, to eliminate problems due to racism, and work on eliminating segregation, working on integration, supporting the communities, helping them with legal assistance, and so on and so forth. Is this really the best way to go? So, like, let's solve racism first, and then the environmental injustice will be solved automatically. It feels like there is some sort of trajectory uh, in the context how we are talking about, how many people talked about or approached this subject on this conference. Uh, so if I want to be a little bit ironic, I could say that just be more woke. That's our job, and then the mountains of trash will disappear from Patarat. And I mean, people don't have to work by digging through them day by day. Mm, no, it will not. This is not this is not a direct solution or approach. So we should just take, maybe, it's a question. I'm not sure about the answers, but why I was happy that Mr. Ivanov brought this up is because I also had this growing thought, but not so clear cut before he brought it up himself. And this did not get much recognition on the conference. No one really reacted to it as far as I'm concerned, or maybe I missed something, but it did not make many waves. So I thought it's worth mentioning. Um, so what should we do? Like, we should maybe look at it as a physical local problem and formulate an adequate response. And what kind of framing should we use if the racism framing is not enough, maybe? Because remember that the people who created the concept of environmental justice, it was told early in the conference that it feels that environmental protection and anti-racism not is together not enough to help these people who are suffering. Right now they somehow fall down in the net. There's a safety net, but it doesn't catch them still, because all of the problems should be solved, like, if we look at them separately. Is this an environmental problem? Yes. Is this a racism problem? Yes. Do we have institutions for both? Yes. Is the problem solved? No, hell no. Absolutely not solved. So I would frame these locations as locations of ongoing humanitarian crisis, which interestingly gets a lot of attention when happens in other areas where the majority society is affected, even outside the EU, in the world, when something like this, maybe a natural catastrophe happens, or a very similar case to environmental injustice, like waste spillage or something. These I talked about this last week as well. That the reaction is very, very large. The media attention is big. There will be scrutiny, and politicians will be accounted for, and the things these things have consequences when it happens to majority societies. And once we talk about a humanitarian crisis, there is big attention going on. These are identified as very clear focus focus points of crisis on our planet. Maybe that's the context we should use in this case. And the way you can do that is that actually what we have to emphasize, and it will be, I'm very sad that I have to say this, that you are not talking about the Roma people suffering injustice, you are talking about people suffering, like people in general. When when there are communities that are hit hard by whatever kind of crisis, it's not really important, to be honest, to that what is their ethnicity. So that's not like a top priority, because we are human beings. We have the very same needs, like food and shelter, and in this sense we are all the same. Of course, there are cultural and many different levels of differences, but in the case of a humanitarian crisis, this is not like a major key decision point, or it doesn't influence what kind of trucks or helicopters do you send to the area, if they are Asians who need your help, or Indians, or the Roma. It's there are probably very small differences in the case of what is available at the location and this kind of stuff, and how you approach it. But it's a humanitarian problem, and why I maybe like this is because it's a bigger. It's somehow it's a bigger. It We are moving away from the racism problem and elevate this to a higher level. Honestly, I think this is a higher level which generates more attention, and it's more severe, because racism is just something that is with us. It has been us for a very long time, and there is, and let's say, I I can. My opinion is that there is some progress. That definitely have been some social progress in the last 100 years or so in our world, and maybe one day it will be solved, and or at least I think it won't be like non-existent in our world and in our societies, but it will be pushed down to a very manageable, almost negligible level if we just solve issues like this at first. So uh, and of course, who I am to say something like this sitting in this chair, but maybe this should not be framed as a racist problem, and maybe that the ethnicity of those involved are not the most important parts, the most important dimensions of this problem, of course. But there are some other people who say this, not just Mr. Ivanov or me. I mentioned last week that there was a lady from the Romania, a representative of the Romanian government, who asked for a word, and as a form of question, you can ask questions from the panels while you are sitting at the conference as a guest, or an attendant, and she was just an attendant. And instead of asking a question, she offered her perspective, her feedback, and she was very frustrated. And I talked about this last week again a lot, that the Roma communities are completely fed up, because there are people amongst them who are very well known in Brussels, who are working in EU institutions, who are working in high politics, and they come from locations like this, and all their life what they are trying to do is to help their original community to make it better, and some of them they do it for 10 years now, 15 years, or 20 years, and they don't see much progress, which must be, even thinking about this is heartbreaking. Like, imagine their situation, that they are now, let's say, okay, they are living a middle class lifestyle, and they dedicate their lives to help their own relatives, and they just they go from conference to conference, to hearings, and commenting on policies. And this woman said that, but and I will not word by word, but I will quote here. She stood up and said, Pasarat is Romania's responsibility as a country. There have been many projects already in the past few decades to help people who live in locations like Pasarat, and very low results. This is a Romanian community problem, and she said that we are Roma, but we are also EU citizens, and that means that we have the same rights as EU citizens. And she said, I would not like to be treated differently, and I will monitor this. So it's the same. It comes from them as well. Being a Roma is not the most important aspect of this. Obviously, as I talked about it a lot, there is historic racism, historic anti-Gypsyism, and the locations, the situations like Patarat are results of historic abuse, human rights violation, racism, segregation towards vulnerable communities like the Roma. This is true. This is beyond question. It's uh, it's true. All that I would like to just bring up or ask questions about that, at least in terms of communication or how we approach it, how we approach this, just how much emphasis should be on this being that there are Roma communities who are suffering, because honestly, most of the communities suffering, at least in Central Europe, are Roma, but there are many cases of environmental justice problems where maybe especially poorer parts or segments of majority societies also can suffer. In Hungary, there have been many cases uh, that I know of where where like towns or cities suffered immensely from technically crimes that not following, some people not following regulations and some other people suffering because of it, like losing their homes or developing several issues with their health. And I'm sure that there are many cases like this in all over Central Europe, and of course, in some cases, the West produced situations like this as well, and globally. It's not just an EU thing. So only two people said something like this that brought this up. This lady, again, I don't know her name because she was just an attendant at the conference, and I didn't catch her name and wasn't able to identify her later. And Mr. Ivanov. Okay, so some food for thought maybe, and I think that's all that I wanted to share about what happened at the conference directly. And I did not have the time to do this last week, and anyway, I wanted to elaborate this on a bit. So let's say I got some extras. This is a flood map. This is Hungary. This is a flood map of Hungary. This has been done by Minority Rights, and this is an example of flood-borne environmental injustice against Roma communities, because if you look at this map, most of these areas are also where the Roma live. So again, they are disproportionately affected. This is not like these are not landfills. This is not a toxic kind of problem. It's improper water management and underdeveloped infrastructure problem. Let's see. 227 Roma settlements in Hungary reported at least one flood-related occasion during the last decade. they are more vulnerable. We have extreme droughts and heavy rainfall and thunderstorms due to climate change in the last few years. And this will probably only get worse. So you can see the share of Roma population, and the red one is, well, 25, 100 is okay. So I will help you like go a little deeper here. Okay, so this location, this and this, I can guarantee you that there are many settlements here that are 100% or close to 100%. The Roma population is close to 100, and here some as well, and the rest is like what you can see. So 10, 5, 25, whatever. Okay, so this is how it shapes up. The article says that flash floods can have significant health impacts, while they can very significantly destroy your home as well, as it happened. And it brings up an interesting thing somewhere below that yeah, so some of them actually benefited from this unevenly, because following the floods, 14 or 15% of the respondents did not receive any aid, and the Roma respondents said that 21% said that they did not receive any aid. Of course, it's always a little bit hazy, because when you ask Roma to, like, how do you identify yourself, they don't necessarily. It depends a lot on how you ask the question and how direct you are and how clear is the question, because obviously a lot of them will just say that we are Hungarians, and then a lot of them identify as one beyond. And if you ask that, but you are a Roma, and they will say, oh yeah, of course I'm Roma, but I'm Hungarian. So there's always some sort of distortion in these kind of researches. And some of the community referred to the flood as golden floods, where, as one interviewee notes, those who were closer to the fire, it's a phrase in Hungarian to have adequate political whatever connections, got more assistance and aid from the local authorities, which means that some of the houses have been completely rebuilt, and some of them obviously didn't receive any help at all. So lack of consistency and disparity in distribution. And of course, when people have the power to decide who gets their houses rebuilt, that's again a platform, a possibility to execute like racist tendencies, which have historic roots in majority societies in all of countries of Central Europe. Especially, I guess, the more you go to, I don't even want to go there. There is no big difference between whatever parts of the country. Okay, and something else I want to add is well, actually, this is. Oh yeah, one more thing. I got one more thing about this subject. Where is it? Yeah, it's kind of like what's next on Intergrowth segment. So let's go back to the Deutsche Welle documentary for a hot minute. And let's watch this for it's like a minute or two.
Back at Patarit, Istvan Szokacs has come up with a new plan.
Anytime I come here to film, I see this happening, that the garbage trucks are not coming up, just dumping I want to install this camera, which is solar panel, solar powered, and can do non-stop video. to see how many trucks actually come up to this facility. If I hide this well and nobody finds it, then in 1 week I will have 1 week of footage of exactly how many trucks came, how many went, and so on.
So we need to find this guy, István Szakács, and ask him what did he uncover with these cameras, because there's something systemically wrong with the landfill somehow, and I don't know if the authorities are investigating it with much effort. So that's why NGOs and local heroes like this person took the matter in their own hands. So it will be very interesting to reach out to him and get his perspective. So that's something I will try to do in Intel Grove, not necessarily next week, but in the near future. Okay, something else I want to do is that last week when I talked about possible steps towards solutions, because I'm not saying that we are here to provide solutions, we just try to analyze the subject as well as we can. But obviously questions come up. And one thing I said that I think that Roma communities are more traditional than majority societies in general, not all of them, obviously, but because Roma communities are very colorful and different on a case-by-case basis. Depending on where you go in a country, but within very small locations as well, there can be huge differences. Some of them are totally integrated and are living alive completely indifferent or similar, completely similar to how anyone of the majority would live. Some of them still have completely different ways of living. Okay, anyway, I have this theory, and do I have this? Yeah, I want to show this to you. So there is this book called 5 Stages of Collapse. Oops, sorry. Can I do this with a more... How can I position myself to present this book accordingly? So the 5 Stages of Collapse Survivor's Toolkit by Dmitry Orlov. For a while I've been enjoying Dmitry Orlov's work a lot, especially in the early, like the 2010s. A lot of interesting writing about peak oil and the resilience. Way before this has been thoroughly publicized and talked about in like mainstream media, in policymaking. But in this book, he is bringing up case studies, and in one way he presents collapse, that how societal collapse happens and maybe will happen to us if things go like as as some people say, at business as usual. So if we like don't put more effort into tackling the challenges that global societies face right now, the many multi-layered challenges, then of course our societies will collapse in the sense that they will not be sustainable as they are now. And Orlov says there are different stages of collapse. The first is financial collapse, then commercial, then political, then social, and cultural is the final. And for all the phases, he ends, so the chapters of this book are grouped by these phases, and he elaborates on the phases, and every chapter is closed by a case study. And chapter 4, the social collapse one, is a case study about the Roma. Orlov is a Russian, and he used his childhood memories about the Roma who lived nearby where he lived. And I think an important part of what I what I mentioned about Roma communities being resilient because they have a historic, no, traditional decision-making process in place, something that most majority modern societies don't have. So my theory was that that means that when you try to help the Roma, you need to identify these key decision makers first and engage in open dialogue with them. So, is this really true, or am I just making it up based on what Orlov wrote here? Or of course, I have some experience. I'd also studied some things about the Roma, and I'm a Central European, so I have first-hand experience as well. And but one thing I want to do on the Intel Grove is to check the validity of this claim. So I will try to look for someone who can tell me that just how prevalent is this, how relevant is this, can you really identify decision makers in Roma communities if I just need to go 20 kilometers, 30 at best, to find major Roma settlements, or it's next to Budapest, capital of Hungary, you can find settlements with a very large percentage of Roma population, and I know personally a lot of NGOs who work with them. So this is a claim that I will try to validate here as well, so we can be more sure about the validity of this suggestion or possible road ahead. And finally, what can be expected here? I want to show you some of the things that I found interesting during the last few weeks, and if we have the capacity, we will try to explore these things, these news that came up. So one thing is this. I will translate this for you in a sec. Secret Service report was prepared on the terrorist risk appearing at the southern border, and the key quote is somewhere here. So Kocsis confirmed. Who is Mr. Kocsis? Mate Kocsis. Leader of the Fidesz faction. Also, but yeah, Kocsis Mate is the leader of the Fidesz faction, but that his statement is obviously based on what border patrol experiences in the southern border, the Serbian border. So they say that there was a shooting. 3 people have been dead, shot dead. But basically that's all we know. 3 people. I mean, so there was some sort of clash with authorities which involved shooting. So someone shot someone, but they say that the situation is getting worse. The safety of the Hungarian border guards, border hunters, and police officers is in concrete practical danger, as live ammunition is already being used by migrant gangs and terrorist cells. Now this sounds a bit over the top, like it's a little bit bombastic thing to say. So, and there is not much there is no information and beyond this. Maybe, I don't know, due to national security or whatnot, but the people who live there probably know more about this, and I mean, how apocalyptic? Like, can you imagine? Like, we have this fence on the border to Serbia, and on the southern side there are. This is what we have to imagine, that there are migrant gangs that are equipped with weapons, really, within Serbia, and they are like. This is how they are trying to find ways to come into Hungary to then to ask as to unleash start an asylum seeking process. That the whole thing seems very like, you know, it's it's I don't know, it's colorful. I don't want to use the analogy that it's like a movie or something, but you know, this is what comes up. This is something that it would be definitely interesting to know more about that, what this means, and what's the truth behind this. Obviously, there are a lot of people trying to cross the border illegally from Serbia, so this is 100% true. Some of them, like, there are cases of people digging holes or climbing over somehow. And I'm also living close to a border, but it's another border. It's the opposite part of the country, the northern. And for some reason, we also have this issue that there are a lot of human trafficking is rampant. There are thousands of drivers of illegally trafficked migrants. Thousands of them have been arrested already. Uh, uh, Maybe not thousands, but more than 1,000 is what I want to say. So there have been some serious issues going on with illegal migration, definitely, but this is like a whole new level, and this this very what I want to explore is that how much is this used as a political communication uh, tool, and how much of this is an exaggeration of sorts, because the claim is insanely rough. Okay, something else that came up that I find interesting is the party pushing for self-determination. So there is a, as Euractiv reports, there is a European Free Alliance party in the EU, and they are a party for self-determination. They seek to represent voiceless nations and peoples, encompasses political forces from traditionally nationalist regions, so like nationalist, separatist, you know, uh, regions that want more independence, like Catalonia. Sometimes Scotland is mentioned, like this, Brittany, Corsica, among others. And they also mention somewhere. So yeah, I just want to introduce the founders, including Raul Romeva, member of Separatist Republican Left of Catalonia Party, and Melis Rosberg, representing the Danish minority in Germany. So there is this political party which tries to represent everyone within the EU who is not satisfied with the level of independence they get in any way, like people who live in, let's say, parts of countries that want more rights, maybe separated from their mother country, so to speak, or at least, to be more realistic, to gain more rights, gain more independence, gain more decision-making power, but also people who just live in a different country and they feel that their rights are maybe. I would be interested to hear that what kind of human rights abuse a Danish man experiences in Germany. and what their goals would be. But what I'm trying to arrive at is that what do these people think about the Roma? I mean, they would be a perfect like candidates for being included. They are the greatest ethnic group of Europe without their own nation state, and thus like historically suffering from their human rights being violated and not granted enough. So, what is the word? Self-determination. Well, the people of Patarat could really use a good amount of self-determination, I think. So, of course, it's not the most important party, or it doesn't have great power yet. But I'm always curious when I see like fringe movements like this and the whole concept. It's what I find charming is this, that it groups a whole aspect of European existence into. So it's interesting even to think about that there are people that maybe who wants to live in a free Catalonia, and they collaborate somehow with people who wants to be in a Corsica, because what is the end game here? The end game must be that it I mean, it's just my theory, but you want these people to live in an environment where their rights feel are not violated anymore, and they are as free basically as they want to be. And how can the EU provide this? Because it's a basic human right. We could probably provide, the EU could probably and should strive to provide the freedom for everyone within the EU. So there, it would totally make these claims baseless. Like, what is the why why would you want a free Catalonia when all of your rights are actually granted to you? Okay, I never heard about anyone thinking about this. It's a little bit out of the box, and this is why I like it very much. And I have that time, I would really like to get to know more about this. And now let's go to Africa, because sometimes we need to talk about things happening outside Europe, as obviously because the threats come from the outside as well. And well, this is not a threat that is a direct threat to the EU ecosystem, but I find it interesting that Ludditism is showing up. And so right now there is a modernization of tea, can I say plantations? Or maybe I should just say farms in Kenya. And obviously the workers are not satisfied. So again, it's something that you are creating, you are doing some sort of economical development, and you are not thinking it through. We arrive at the point when some people will suffer from something that should be I'm sure that for the Kenyan economy, putting machines in place of humans, it's better, because it's make those companies, it has them make more money. But then you need to focus on the people who lose their livelihoods, right? So automation is only going to continue at a breakneck speed, particularly as AI becomes more common. Rage in tea-picking regions could just be an early sign of future tensions if governments and companies don't find ways to help workers. You see, it's this problem is so similar to environmental justice, because again, with what I've been talking about, the key problem was that neither anti-racism and neither environmental protection efforts are not enough to protect, to protect the vulnerable communities, as in the case of Patarat, and as in the case, it seems it's the similar case. We just when when you have a situation like this, you have to think ahead. You would think, at least, at what will happen. How can I actively solve this? Because I'm sure that there would be ways to do it. Majority of pickers are young women, often lack the opportunities and skills to thrive outside the tea sector. Well, think about the bootcamp idea that I mentioned last week. Of course, I will bring this up, I think, a lot. Retraining farm workers, as well as creating more jobs and diversifying economies into growing communities, will be key to countering violence and growing anger. What a strange thing to frame this, right? You are doing this to counter violence and growing anger. Why? I mean, maybe it would be more appropriate to say that it will be key to ensure the preservation of human rights of the people involved, or standard of living or way of life or something, not just let's avoid them beating us up. My ministry is keen on opening up the labor market to boost employment opportunities for Kenyans. Oh, okay. Well, this sure. This is now just the political statement part. Yeah, so the trend is likely to continue hurting rural communities. So this is a prime example, and this is an example when the tea pickers took action, like very violent action. Although there are some, let's say, there is a philosophy which says that property damage is just a form of activism, actually. Of course, it's like destroying private property is against the law, but so it's not a legal form of activism, but it's not like they have been killing anyone. They were destroying machines. So this is just a signal that open dialogue and research could be used. We need more emphasis on that in every sort of when you are doing something that changes how your local community is organized. And again, let's go back to what Anne Scheinberg said last week. You can see that in last week's video that if there is an illegal landfill, instead of just abolishing it and scare everyone who is working there away, just contact them and try to build something together with them. Do I have something else? Yeah, very quickly, the Blanchely summit and the Bletchley Park. Yeah, it's declaration. Yeah, sorry, that was I was looking for. So the Bletchley Declaration. From an outside point of view, it looks like a major stepping stone in how we are handling AI development on an international level. Obviously, this is the subject of AI needs to be followed closely because we don't want to end up in the matrix, do we? So that's a direct threat, if you can think about it that way, towards democratic societies. And of course, there are a lot of problems about the last few years of so-called AI development, although I'm kind of disheartened to use the words or the expression artificial intelligence at this point, because a language model is not an artificial intelligence tool. So again, we already have the problem that we don't really know what we are talking about, but sure, let's call it AI. Yeah, this is something we want to explore a bit more in the future. But that's it for now. Thank you for tuning in. And this endeavor of ours, the Intel Grove, obviously brand new and doesn't have a direct reach towards like a community, so it's a growing channel. So at this point you can do a lot of, you can support us very easily if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and like the videos you find there, and follow us on Twitch, and please look up the Intel Grove on Substack, because we are turning these videos into some sort of articles, and probably we'll be posting some extra material as well as one I already did. If you think that these kind of issues need some more discussions and that this could use some more spotlight, please send this material to anyone who you think might find it interesting, because at this point, obviously, it would mean a lot to us. First, we need to get to like 5-10 subscribers, or at least a dozen people who are regularly consuming this kind of content before we can even think about growing this into something bigger. And after a while, it has to be self-sustaining, because it takes considerable effort to set up something like this, even if the most of the effort is the Twitch stream itself at this point, what you have maybe seen right now. So thanks for watching, and we will be back next week, probably on the Friday, but we will see. And be on the lookout for the YouTube videos and our Substack as well. And again, thanks for being here, and share, and just drop your feedback if you have anything to say. I know that I said a lot of controversial things. I try to bring up perspectives that are not necessarily hands-on or spring to your mind directly or at first. I'm always looking for the interesting angle. But I guess this is part of the analysis process, what we are trying to do here in real time in the Intergrove. So thanks for watching, and see you next week.